before I took over their empire. They made fun of me over champagne. As soon as I entered my Aunt Patricia's marble tomb of a mansion, I knew the Wilson family reunion would be oppressive. It was always that way. Chandeliers made of crystal, gems that might blind a small nation, and the sickening sweet scent of hereditary riches and judgment. While drinking a glass of champagne and attempting to avoid choking on the aroma of superiority, I stood in the corner. All around me, my relatives were loudly boasting about their most recent corporate victories, six-figure bonuses, and promotions from law firms. Me? I was dressed in a simple black dress. Easy, secure, invisible. Until Aunt Patricia noticed me, of course. Olivia! Her voice cut like a well-honed scalpel through the cacophony. I nearly missed you there, dear. Are you still employed as a secretary? I sipped a tiny bit of champagne. Actually, an administrative assistant. Her eyebrows shot up so sharply I could have cut paper with them. Still working for that small consulting business? Again, what was it called? Summit? Something? Come to an agreement, I whispered. Then came Ethan, the family's golden kid, who had just joined his father's legal practice as a partner. He grinned and said, "Come on, Liv. I could help you land a legitimate job. Something with real promise for a career." Back at the office, I imagined the pile of contracts awaiting my signature. My workspace, the one with my name on the glass and a view from the corner. I grinned. I'm content with where I am. Aunt Patricia's laugh was brittle and bitter. You're squandering your potential, darling. Your cousins are business leaders, partners, and executives. Additionally, you continue to promote paper for other people. If only they were aware. The reality? I was the someone else they were constantly making fun of. And for the past 10 years, the whole charade, the fake title, the dowdy clothes, the invisibility had been my tool. Because I was 24 when I last stood in that mansion, recently graduated from business school, armed with a hopeful head and a groundbreaking concept for reorganizing damaged businesses, I foolishly believed that my family's vast network of business contacts would help me launch my idea, so I proposed it to them. They chuckled. "Are you consulting?" Uncle Robert had sneered at that. "Let the big boys handle that. Do you wish to work? Begin in the mailroom, similar to everyone else." Naturally, this refers to all of the men in the family. Talent was not the foundation of the Wilsons' enterprise. They based it on heritage and tradition, figuring out which grandchild to cram into a boardroom next. Women were supposed to marry wealthy people or work as their assistants. Not much more. I made two choices that evening. First, I would start my own business. Secondly, I would make them regret every arrogant, contemptuous utterance. In a little office on the second floor above a Chinese restaurant, I founded Summit Solutions. The first 3 months' rent was barely paid by my entire life savings. However, I didn't require mahogany workstations or a marble lobby. I required faith within myself, and I had plenty of that. My very first customer? A manufacturing company that is about to go bankrupt. They wouldn't be touched. All the city's consulting firms had gone by. I didn't. After 3 grueling months of restructuring, downsizing, and negotiating with creditors, they turned a profit, thriving. Word got out, silently discreetly, about this enigmatic small company that prevented doomed businesses from going over the edge. I made careful hiring decisions as we expanded. Those who understood my vision and, more significantly, my need for privacy. Ironclad NDAs were signed by all. My name was removed from all public records, not a press, not a bio, only the CEO. I continued to remain out of sight. Even after we relocated to a modern downtown high-rise, I retained that shabby office over the Chinese restaurant. I provided evasive, uninteresting responses when relatives inquired about my work. I'd say administrative work. They would get glazed. Excellent. They didn't give me a second glance. That was the main idea. Because I was out there salvaging those firms first, while they were busy acquiring fragile companies at incredibly low prices, Wilson Ventures' characteristic tactic. It was dubbed hostile acquisition. I referred to it as karma. 10 years went by. There are 12 offices. Fortune 500 customers. A success rate of 94%. Silent power. And nobody in my family knew. Right up till yesterday night. More bubbly? Aunt Patricia had inquired, her lips forming that recognizable, patronizing grin. But maybe you should limit yourself to water. I assume that your pay doesn't allow you many luxuries. I gave her a glass clink. I'm grateful, Aunt Patricia. How is Uncle Robert's recent purchase going? Wasn't it Williams Manufacturing? The grin wavered. For a moment only. Complications have arisen, she sniffed, but nothing that Robert is unable to manage. She was unaware that I was the cause of those issues. 3 months prior, Summit Solutions had received a message from Williams Manufacturing. We reorganized their debt, streamlined their operations, and eliminated wasteful spending. The value of their shares was increasing. Uncle Robert's attempt to buy? Tanking. Ethan had swirled his scotch and whispered, I heard they hired some consulting firm. Most likely, good money is being thrown after bad. All of those consultants are deceptive. For saving Williams, our business was paid more than Ethan would make in 5 years. My phone then began to buzz. Wilson Ventures is requesting an urgent meeting to discuss a merger with Williams. 9:00 a.m. They were, of course. The takeover was being abandoned. They wanted to be pleasant now. Aside from, they would enter a boardroom the following morning with the expectation of outnegotiating a non-existent CEO. They would discover me seated at the head of the table. No more coffee. Stop smiling and nodding. The meeting would be led by me. And at last, they would see the woman they had underestimated for 10 years. It wouldn't make a difference. I had already won by then. They requested coffee. Instead, I gave them a contract. There was silence during the elevator ride to the executive floor. It was just me, my image in the mirrors, and the growing buzz of a decade of planning coming full circle. The plain black outfit from the reunion last night was gone. I wore a clean, well-tailored, and unabashedly forceful navy Chanel suit today. Not all times does power make its presence known. It waits sometimes. Keep quiet, accurate, be patient. Maya, my assistant, greeted me at the doors with a sly smile on her face and a tablet in one hand. As we strolled, she remarked, They're early. Wilson Ventures. Every one of them. Uncle Robert? Even though I already knew, I asked. Maya gave a nod. Ethan, too. It seems that he insisted on managing the legal aspect himself. I grinned coldly. He did, of course. Just a day before, the same cousin who had offered me a real job was going to discover what true power looked like. Who else? I inquired. I suppose your Aunt Patricia came for moral support. James is also present, representing the financial industry. Excellent. The entire circus. I looked at the time. 8:57 a.m. Has coffee been offered to them? Maya grinned. Your aunt said that nobody was available to serve it. The administrative assistant will be in soon, I informed them. It nearly made me chuckle. They continued to believe that I was merely a secretary. The girl in the corner, calm. The errand runner. The person who gets coffee. 10 years of not being seen. Playing little for 10 years. They were allowed to believe anything they wanted to think for 10 years. And now? It was time now. I approached the conference room at a leisurely pace. Heavy doors made of glass. Their voices were audible. The rough order from my uncle, Ethan's arrogant tone, Patricia's sarcastic, sugar-coated remarks. I took a deep, steady, grounding breath as my final one. I then pushed the door open. Quiet. They paused in the middle. James was looking through documents next to my uncle, who was seated at the far end of the table and had obviously claimed the power seat. Ethan fiddles with his expensive watch. Aunt Patricia was looking at her manicure as though it were a piece of art. The CEO of Williams Manufacturing, Mr. Harrison, was seated alone across from them. My customer. Why every one of us was present. Aunt Patricia hardly looked up as she said, Finally. We have been anticipating. Then she turned to face me, glanced closely. She opened her mouth. Olivia? What do you have on? Furthermore, where is the coffee? I was not blinking. Aunt Patricia, I no longer serve coffee. A rhythm. In actuality. Actually, I never did. Uncle Robert leaned forward, a facade of false civility melting into annoyance. Where is Summit's CEO? A meeting with the real decision maker was promised to us. I walked calmly to the true head of the table and sat down, saying, "You're having one. I am the chief executive officer." Like a thunderclap, it struck them. Ethan appeared to have been struck in the throat. Mid pen stroke, James froze. Patricia's expression flickered in shock. "Uncle of mine?" Red, quiet, boiling. I waited. Allow the quiet to last. Give them a seat in it. Then Maya entered with a tidy stack of contracts in her hand, calm and collected. Without saying a word, she distributed them, then stood behind me like the specter of all the women they had undervalued. "These are the terms under which Summit Solutions will consider approving a merger with Wilson Ventures regarding Williams Manufacturing," I stated, tapping the top page. "Think about it." Ethan sputtered. "You're not serious. This is crazy. You work as a secretary." I looked him square in the eyes and answered, "No, that served as my cover. One that you all accepted a bit too readily." Uncle Robert's voice had changed to a deep growl. "You have been deceiving us!" I cocked my head. "No, I simply never changed your presumptions." Behind me, I displayed our most recent financials onto the screen. Summit Solutions, 122 billion in assets owned by clients, 12 cities with offices, a success rate of 94%. Olivia Carter is the CEO. I saw their faces lose their color. "This must be a hoax," James muttered. At last, Mr. Harrison said in a firm voice, "It's not. Our business was saved by Summit. Summit rebuilt us while Wilson Ventures attempted to destroy us. Our profits have already increased by 47%. I gave a nod. "And that's only the start." Ethan got up suddenly. "I'm going to call our attorneys." I didn't wince. "You did that already." He blinked. "For this meeting, can you remember the contracts you attempted to negotiate? This year's largest client for your firm?" I was that person. Maya gave him another item that his crew had overlooked: our legal spend, our firm's alias. He took a slow seat. Quiet. "You believe you can ruin us?" Robert, uncle, spat. "No," I replied. "I did it already." Silently. In a strategic manner, lawfully, Maya presented the completed manuscript. I stood up and stated, "Summit Solutions will start acquiring a controlling interest in Wilson Ventures tomorrow if you don't sign the merger terms by 5 p.m. today. We possess the liquidity, as well as the leverage." I stopped at the entrance. Aunt Patricia, too? Her lips hung open as she looked up. "You gave me that champagne last night? The vineyard is mine. Purchased it a year ago." I grinned. "Regarding the coffee that you so desperately needed this morning, I own that chain as well." I left them there after that, astonished, quiet. They were just where I wanted them. When they discovered that the empire they had mocked was indeed mine, I let the silence to envelop me like a second skin as soon as I returned to my office. My personal workspace. My seat. On the door is my name. Being unseen for 10 years. Right now, all eyes had been on me in that boardroom. It's shock. Not respect yet. Perplexity. Fear. Excellent. Maya entered with a real cup of coffee. The blend I had stealthily purchased from the chain of cafes 2 years prior. Without saying anything, she placed it on my desk. I encircled it with my hands. "Warm. Known. Was the wait worthwhile?" Softly, she inquired. I gave her a look. I reflected on the times I had passed through these corridors, the same building, the same face, the same heels. But I had coffee with me back then, took jackets, made sure my family didn't see the empire. I was creating right in front of them. "Every moment," I replied. I meant it too. Before I had even finished my glass, the texts began to arrive. "Aunt Patricia, let's talk about this over lunch, darling. My favorite niece has always been you. Ethan, Liv, hurry up. We were only kidding. Families should remain united. James, you cannot harm us in this way. We are blood." I paid them all no attention. Rather, the first concentrated on the board members of Wilson Ventures' remarks because they were the only ones that were important. They were not stupid. When the tide turned, they knew it. They planned an emergency board meeting for midday. They unanimously decided to approve the terms of the merger by a vote of 3. It was finished. Uncle Robert didn't go in silence. Naturally, he didn't. He barged into my office without warning at 4. 7 p.m., his voice resonating off the glass. This family has been betrayed by you. Maya was on her feet, poised to stop it. I glanced at her and stopped her. Give him a chance. Without taking my eyes off my laptop, I answered, I would say that this family taught me a lot. You taught us this, right? Take control. Get rid of the competitors. Never be weak. We gave you everything, he said, gesturing to me with a quivering finger. I laughed at that. I stood up and said, You gave me nothing. It's better than nothing. I learned from you that I would never measure up, that helping the guys was the only way for a woman to succeed in this household. Grin. Give a nod. Remain small. I gave him a direct look. I therefore created something superior. Silently. The first, then, allowed you to fool yourself. He gazed at me. There was a change in his posture, not anger this time. Something more modest, sadder. It wasn't until the war was done that a man realized he had never seen the battlefield. Why now? He inquired. He spoke in a coarser tone, older. You could have remained undetected. I gave a shrug. Because I'm tired of seeing you ruin respectable businesses in order to stroke your own pride. Electronics by Thompson. Maritime Remedies. I am familiar with the list. He turned his head away. I gave a folder to him. The ultimate terms of the merger are as follows. A controlling shareholding is acquired by Summit Solutions. Wilson Ventures changes its focus to building rather than stripping. If you'd like, you can continue working as a consultant. Otherwise, page 3 contains your golden parachute. His hands trembled as he opened it. You considered every possibility, I remarked. I learned from the best. Not in the manner he desired, though. The headlines hit the following day. A secret CEO disclosed how a single woman silently created a billion-dollar business. The downfall of the Wilson family and the niece who brought them down, it seemed unreal. I used to copy job listings off front pages and my face appeared on them. What was more important than the headlines, though? There was only one message buzzing on my phone. Not from a member of the board. Not from the news media. From my mom. Years before, she had cut ties with the Wilsons. Walked away from their frigid tradition, their harshness, and their power. What did she say? You'll show them. I always knew that. I gazed at those 8 words while I sat there, and shed a tear for the first time in a decade. Not because I was depressed, since I was at last noticed. Restructuring meetings, media appearances, and legal wrap-ups dominated that week. Following the official announcement of the merger, Wilson Ventures' stock price surged by 40%. Businesses that had previously shied away from the Wilson name were now contacting Summit Solutions because they wanted to join. Aunt Patricia attempted to present it as a touching tale of redemption. She told a reporter, We always knew Olivia had potential. It's just evidence that Wilson has a strong entrepreneurial spirit. In response, I made available video footage from the reunion from the previous year, in which she spent 20 minutes straight telling the family why I would never amount to anything. The video became viral. Since then, she hasn't done an interview. It wasn't warmly received by Ethan. He attempted damage control. I knew all along, he said, referred to me as his inspiration. Unfortunately, his stunned response had been witnessed by far too many individuals in that conference room. Clients began to leave his firm. He was on leave in less than a month. Ironically, James adjusted the fastest. He asked me to lunch 2 weeks following the revelation, made an attempt to propose a new collaboration. As he chewed his $38 scale salad, he declared, Together, we could rule the market. Wilson Summit Partnership, consider it. I used a linen napkin to wipe my mouth. Summit Solutions isn't about that. We don't rule. We raise. He failed to understand. Most of them wouldn't. However, change, it arrived. Not in stock prices or news releases. It came in hushed little bursts. An intern told me that I gave her hope, her eyes welling with tears. A female executive said that she observed what I did and decided to stay in the business. I'm being invited to talk at business schools on rebuilding, not retaliation, concerning ethics, about having power without being unkind. I took the stage to accept the Business Innovation Award 3 months after the announcement. My mother was delighted as she sat in the front row. Behind her, a few of my former administrative assistants, Women who developed their own careers within Summit while assisting me in maintaining my cover. I took the microphone. Having the loudest voice isn't a prerequisite for success, I stated. What you do when no one is looking is what matters. I could have come out sooner, but I held off until we had the strength to alter the system. There was loud applause. However, the fulfillment, there was silence. And long after the lights went out, it continued to haunt me. The family that had ignored me was now employed by me. I always thought there would be a thunderclap of some sort when I eventually emerged from behind the curtain. A full orchestra, cinematic moment. However, it is not how real power falls. Silent as air, it slips in, and it never goes away once it settles. In comparison, the weeks that followed were a study. Wilson Ventures was changing on the outside. My inner world was calm, concentrated, tactical, tidy. We started tearing down the culture of conquest they had established. No more hostile acquisitions. No more dismantling businesses and throwing the bones away. We changed the playbook, reorganized departments, and replaced half of the leadership. Not only in the boardroom either, women were being promoted for the first time at Wilson Ventures. Reliable, listened to, not merely for show, for their minds, for their perseverance, for all they had previously endured without speaking. The press continued to swirl. I left most of them to Maya. She was gifted with the ability to filter noise. She smirked as she entered one morning and placed a newspaper on my desk. The Consulting Ice Queen: How a Single Female Overcame the Boys and Acquired Their Empire. I chuckled quietly. I wasn't cold. I had just finished saying I was sorry for not playing little. The section about which no one writes? The fatigue. Because it takes more than just talent to rebuild something. It requires endurance, as well as faith. Particularly when you're repairing something you were previously completely excluded from. I used to think, this is what I worked for, when I passed offices that seemed like locked doors. Not the retaliation. Not even the title. The entry. The power to influence future events. The old guard wasn't easily defeated, though. A few complained in private. Others made an effort to pretend nothing had changed. Some, like my uncle, finally realized what was going on. He sent me a private email on the day he formally filed his resignation. Only a few lines. I learned from my niece that dominance isn't the essence of true business. Impact is the key. I'm sorry it took me losing my business to realize that. I spent a long time staring at those words. Have I forgiven him? No. But now I knew what he meant, and it was sufficient. The invitations followed. Each chat show, each summit, each magazine article. However, the one that completely stopped me was a tiny envelope. It was a local return address. Known. The Committee for the Wilson Family Reunion. While drinking coffee from a mug of my own brand, I opened it with one hand. Gold-plated typeface. RSVP card. The location? Headquarters of Summit Solutions. My coffee almost choked me. The committee read, Aunt Patricia apparently made the decision to pass the torch this year and use my building to hold the family get-together. They had, of course, diplomacy disguised as symbolism. I ought to have declined. I wanted to see it through, though, to finally be the one delivering the truth while standing in the exact conference room where I once served coffee. Yes, I replied to the RSVP. Like a recollection in fresh clothes, the reunion day arrived. The same cousins, the same phony smiles. With cautious curiosity and well-chosen phrases, they now entered my personal space. The chandelier above glistened much as it did in Patricia's estate. The light only now reflected off the wall-mounted trophies for my company. At first, Ethan stayed away from me. Too arrogant, too bruised. In search of a chance to propose another joint venture, James lingered close to the buffet. Patricia, too? She came last, wrapped in denial and silk. She kissed the air next to my cheek and said, Oh, Olivia, this area is breathtaking. Simply amazing. With a drink of my champagne, I said, Thank you. This season, the vineyard has been doing well. Her smile wavered. I stood by the window later that night, gazing out at the skyline I had earned every inch of. Maya came stealthily with a tablet. Your 4 p.m. has arrived. Equipment's from Thompson? She gave a nod. Only a few months prior, Uncle Robert had attempted to buy out the same company. Their CEO was now standing in our lobby, seeking a partnership rather than a sale. I straightened my jacket and replied, "Bring them up." "Oh, and Maya?" She pivoted. "Coffee for all. The excellent stuff, from our chain. Sharp and proud." She smiled. "Brewing already." I passed the old nook where I used to sit on my way to the conference room, the admin desk. It's still there, unmoved. I purposely retained it, just in case, of the appearance of being undervalued. How sometimes silence is the best way to build power. As the doors opened, I saw my image in the glass. No more hiding. Playing small is over. I had created something tangible, not despite my family's rejection, due to it. I learned what not to be from them, and I listened quietly, attentively, with all of my being. It was my turn to instruct now, and I wasn't going to accomplish it by raising my voice. They sought refuge in the empire they ridiculed. Everything went according to plan during the appointment with Thomson Electronics. Be calm. Cooperative. There are no power plays. Avoid undercutting. Two businesses and two visions are seated at the same table, with respect, as equals. I remained in the meeting room after it was over. By themselves, the identical room where I used to quietly grin while serving coffee, the same table at which my uncle had attempted to coerce a business into complying. My cousins used to scoff at the notion that I could ever be in charge of anything, and they were the same chairs. And it was mine now, not for show, not to exact revenge. However, for the objective I had always had in mind, to construct, not to shatter. The building was mostly dark later that night. Maya and a small group of cleaning employees were finishing up the day's reports. I stood by my office's floor-to-ceiling windows and gazed down at the metropolis below, lit up as if it were vibrating with every decision I had ever made. Maya knocked once behind me and went in. She handed me a tiny black packet and added, "There's something you should see. Not a logo. Not branded. It was simply my name, scrawled in a script I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Within, a message. Just one line. Now I see you. I apologize for not doing so earlier. Dad," I refrained from crying. Not with resentment, just some clarity. Some apologies come just in time to conclude the chapter, but they come too late to alter the plot. After folding the note, I carefully placed it in the drawer containing my previous employee badge. The one has administrative assistant written on it. My previous disguise, my old armor, my former existence. The media would later refer to it as retaliation. Headlines such as, "The secretary who outsmarted a dynasty and became CEO. How a billion-dollar boys' club was overtaken by one woman." However, they never truly comprehended. This was not an act of retaliation. It has to do with freedom. Not just for me, but for all the women who had been instructed to take notes, sit down, and be silent. Every intern is required to smile condescendingly. For each daughter, the son with leadership potential was chosen. I didn't destroy my family. I demonstrated to them what happens when someone gets up against their will. Months went by. The headlines dwindled. The cameras shifted. However, the effect persisted. Summit Solutions started providing funding for startups run by women. In order to match new workers with executives who perceived potential rather than pedigree, we started an internal mentorship program. The handbook was revised by us. And when someone inquires, "Who is the CEO?" they can locate her without looking past the helper. At the head of the table is her, not because the seat was given to her, but since the table was made by her. The next family gathering was held by me. They used to pass this glass and marble headquarters without noticing, right here. This year, there was less boasting, less snide inquiries concerning titles, more interest, hesitancy, perhaps even deference. Ethan didn't approach. I believe James brought a bottle of wine as a peace gift. Aunt Patricia's smile was quieter than normal, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. And me? I said hello to everyone. Be calm, kind, there, because authority doesn't have to be demonstrated. It simply is. I went back to my office one last time that evening after everyone had left, only the gentle hum of city light coming in through the windows and me. I pulled the drawer open once more. Removed the previous admin badge. I held it for a long time in my hand. After that, I carefully put it next to the Business Innovation Award in a glass frame, not as a medal, just in case. That authority isn't always dressed in a suit. Sometimes, when no one is looking, it creates an empire, offers coffee with a grin, and dresses simply in black. Power can be quiet at times. Be patient. However, it doesn't roar when it rises, really rises. It reverberates. There was no fanfare associated with justice. There were contracts attached, calmly, with coffee that has been brewed just right, and with a woman who was heard without ever having to scream. Simply, hold on, observe, and pay attention. Since we are already present everywhere, we also recall every detail.